Hey, ESPN, I'm Jack.
And I'm Miles from the Daily Zeitgeist, a daily comedic news podcast that answers the question,
what if Stephen A. Smith spoke at a normal volume and his opinions were based on fact and not completely insane? This probably isn't the best way to describe this.
No, you just negated the two things Stephen A. Smith is known for.
Okay, what if The Daily Show was hosted by us?
Yes, but who is us?
Okay, I'm Jack. I'm the co-founder of Crack.com.
And I'm Miles. I love soccer and get very nervous when I'm pulled over by the police.
He's also a former lobbyist who quit politics for comedy.
Yeah. Well, look, we cover news, the president, pop culture, and we're both very big sports fans.
I'm actually named after my grandfather, legendary NBA coach and ESPN alum Dr. Jack Ramsey.
Oh, yeah? Well, I'm named after Miles Davis, the legendary heroin addict who is not my grandfather.
So search the Daily Zeitgeist. If you don't know how to spell zeitgeist, like most of us, just type in Daily Z. It'll figure it out for you. On Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever fine podcasts are given away for free.
And now, Jalen and Jacoby on ESPN Radio.
When I pop the trunk, head to death. Y'all pop the trunk, I pop the hood.
Now act stupid, I'll pop the trunk. Now give me your
It's Jalen Rose.
What up, dude?
I'm David Jacoby.
And on the cool check-in,
We are Jalen and Jacoby. What do?
we get people what they want.
They put us on ESPN, no number after it, no ESPN3, no streaming. Look at us.
I mean, we officially sold out.
Came up.
I mean, you have a haircut, your
Look,
teeth
no one
are
else
white.
wanted this shit. It is
You're
now
looking
3
handsome.
a.m. East Coast. We are East Coast. We are part of the fantasy football marathon. People are signing up for their drafts. I use the app. Use the app. ESPN Fantasy app. I'm already in like 3 leagues on it. We haven't drafted yet, but I'm coming up with my team names and I'm doing all the research. I'm so excited about this. You know why, Mr. Rose? Because I love fantasy football.
It's just a fantasy.
You take fantasy football so seriously. Why?
Number one, because I can play. Mm-hmm. I'm a huge fan of the sport. I realized when I wanted to play defensive end and or tight end, when I ran down the seam one time and I got decleated, that I didn't want to play that sport anymore. Mm-hmm. But I could be a coach in fantasy. I could be a coach in Madden. And I think I'm the greatest GM of all time. I am Vince Lombardi of fantasy.
We are actually about to speak to someone who is the actual greatest GM of all time.
Behind me?
Our resident fantasy expert.
Better
when
be
you
somebody
think
good.
About fantasy football,
if you say it better than me, it better be somebody
man's
good.
Beautiful face comes to mind. Of course, I'm talking about Matthew Berry.
Okay, I'll bow down.
Love Matthew Berry.
Yes,
He'll be
indeed.
joining us shortly, and we've got a lot planned. We'll also be joining.
Hit the brakes.
Here he is.
We got
Matt Berry's
guests?
joining us right now.
We
have
get
guests. We have guests.
Oh my
right
goodness,
now,
we've sold out.
Here he is, and we'll be asking a fantasy god. Now, first of all, we have to speak with Mr. Berry. Mr. Berry, how are you?
How are you? What's up? What's up, guys? Good to see you.
It's great to see you too. How you doing? How many caffeinated beverages have you had so far?
A lot. Quite frankly, a lot. And I like, congratulations, by the way, on all the success, you guys, getting enough juice to not have to come to Bristol this year.
They didn't want to pay for travel.
That your star is on the rise here.
They saw our bill from the mini bar at the DoubleTree, and they decided they couldn't afford that this year. It wasn't in the budget.
Yeah. Fair enough.
One thing, we had this whole segment planned where you were going to be a fantasy god. Now, one thing that we said, you know what? We want to make it very clear. This is a non-denominational.
This is not religion.
You are an all-knowing, all-seeing fantasy deity. Okay?
Right.
And I'm glad we're starting this off on such a serious note.
Yeah, sure.
So, fantasy god. Is Cam Newton going to disappoint owners for a second straight year?
I think it depends on your expectations. I don't think he disappoints because obviously he's not going number one at quarterback the way he was last year. Last year was the consensus number one, obviously finished outside the top 15. But this year, being drafted 8th among quarterbacks, and I think that's right. Somewhere in the 8 to 12 range is right for Cam Newton. I think he runs a little bit less last year. Remember, last year it was a career low in rushing yards and rushing touchdowns for him. And Ron Rivera says we need him to stop running because he's getting banged up. You know, he had the torn rotator cuff, concussion last year. But that said, adding Curtis Samuel, adding Christian McCaffrey, Kelvin Benjamin, another year removed from that injury, I think he passes more, and I think he has a very nice year. So I don't think he disappoints because, again, he's going in the 8 to 12 range.
And also, Charlotte added fellow AT alien Dwight Howard to the team in the NBA.
Yeah.
So they'll get a chance to champagne the campaign a little bit.
I like that it only took us one question for Jalen to make an NBA reference.
An NBA reference. I noticed that too. Thank you, Jalen.
Well, I got another one for
Nice
you.
job,
You better get
Jalen.
ready for. How about the University of Michigan and Tom Brady, my guy? Okay. A lot of people talking about him turning 40 and thinking that this may be the season that he finally, and I'm using your term, my brother, Max Kellerman, falls off a cliff. Is that going to happen?
No, unless somebody pushes him off an actual cliff. Tom Brady's a monster. He's going to have a huge year. I mean, so one of the best quarterbacks in the history of the NFL gets his entire offense back last year from when he had a huge fantasy season and adds Brandon Cooks. Should have Rob Gronkowski for the entire season, adds Dwayne Allen. And think about the weapons in the backfield. Rex Burkhead, Mike Gillislee, James White, Deion Lewis. Like all of them pass catchers, especially a couple of them really good pass catchers. So, I mean, another year of Malcolm Mitchell. I know who they're high on him there. Like so many. I don't know if you're a defensive coordinator how you stop the Patriots this year. So I think Max is nuts on that one. He says wearing a yeah, that's right. I'm talking down to people wearing this.
You are our all-knowing.
Do we have a robe? Can I get a robe
god.
Or something like that? Is there a robe around here?
We couldn't afford the robe.
Fair enough. Understood. All right.
You are our all-knowing fantasy god, our deity of the future. You can see the future, so we have a very simple question for you. Will Ezekiel Elliott's suspension be reduced?
I don't believe so, and I'm basing that on my friend Adam Schefter, who does not believe so. You talk about all-knowing, all-seeing deities. It's Adam Schefter. No one knows more than Adam or Adam's 2 cell phones that he carries around. He talked about this earlier on the marathon, is that and just a guess for him, it's not that he knows anything, but his expectation is that Ezekiel Elliott will be suspended for 6 games, that it won't get reduced, and he thinks that starts week 1.
It's only his second year, missing
Again,
6 games. He'll still play
Adam.
10 more seasons as a member of the Dallas Cowboys. Sammy Watkins just got traded. Will he, play extended periods of football this season?
Will he stay healthy? Potentially. Do I care? Not really. Like, I'm rooting for. I mean, in this sense.
I didn't expect God to throw shade like that.
No. Not from. Listen, I want every player to stay healthy. Not from a rooting for injury standpoint, but I have no confidence whatsoever in Jared Goff and being able to get Sammy Watkins the ball. Obviously, injuries are a big part of his resume in the pros, and Jared Goff, at least last year, based on what we know, and I think it'll be a much better team and a much better offense under Sean McVay. But that said, Jared Goff, like in terms of his depth of target, like he was better than Alex Smith last year. I mean, such a dink and dunker, did not have any interest in throwing down the field, and that's what you want with Sammy Watkins. I mean, Tyrod Taylor is, I think, a very underappreciated quarterback in the NFL and just a cannon for an arm. And just we haven't seen Goff go deep yet, so in a significant way. So I have concerns about Sammy Watkins' fantasy value this year. He won't be on any of my teams.
I love the sound effects.
Yeah. This is a high-quality production you guys have going on here.
Of course. We're prepared. All-knowing fantasy deity. Will Kirk Cousins repeat his fantasy performance after last year, even after losing 2 1,000-yard receivers?
Yeah, I believe so. Big year coming for Kirk Cousins. Last 2 years, 4th in the NFL in passing yards. And, in fact, since Jay Gruden took over the Redskins, only 4 teams in the NFL have passed for more yards than the Washington Redskins. They are going to throw. People don't realize about Kirk Cousins actually more mobile than he gets credit for. 9 rushing touchdowns over the last 2 years. Only Cam has more. And even though he loses Deshaun Jackson, Pierre Garçon, he gets Terrell Pryor. You think about Kirk Cousins last year, the one issue he had was red zone efficiency. They struggled in the red zone. It's one of the reasons why Hopkins led the league in field goal attempts because they just stalled out so much. So now you get a big red zone target in 6'4" Terrell Pryor. Hopefully they get Josh Dotson back. He's 6'2". Jordan Reed needs to stay healthy, but if he does, expect big things from him. And Jamison Crowder is going to have a huge year. So honestly, it's an offense that is going to keep throwing because I don't think the defense is going to be great there. So I expect Kirk Cousins to have another big fantasy year, yeah.
Since, I forgot the music sting. Since you can clearly see the future, you are all-knowing deity, you know exactly what is going to happen. There's a very important question we have for one member that is in this studio. Is Jalen, who pays $10,000 allegedly a year to play in a league against LeBron James and others, is he finally going to get paid this year, or is he going to miss the pay cut by one place as he does every single year?
No, it depends. Can I ask Jalen a question before I answer this?
Absolutely,
of course you can.
deity.
Please.
So, Mr. Rose, will you text me for some advice this year like I always offer you?
Yes,
Then
I
yes,
will.
Yes, you will get paid out.
Hands folded on one knee.
If Matt Berry is in your phone, there's a direct relationship between number of texts and success in your league. Finally.
Absolutely, yes. I will. We can't have Jalen keep losing like this.
We can't.
I know he max dealed in the NBA. I know we pay him a lot of money, but at some point, $10K starts to hurt.
It really
No
does.
question.
It adds up.
It's already started.
Yes. Finally, why hath thou forsaken Andrew Luck?
Well, poor guy can't stay healthy. I have so much like wig hair in my mouth. It's so brutal.
Low calorie wig hair. All gluten-free.
Yeah.
Gluten-free.
You know what? I mean, the concern on Andrew Luck, obviously, is just health. Last year, he was banged up for most of the year, still played through it, still finishes the fourth best quarterback in fantasy. My concern is less about Andrew Luck, which is still a concern, but, quarterback is so deep that even if you have Andrew Luck and he misses a few games to start the season, there are other guys that will be available in your waiver wire you can play matchups. My concern is about guys like T.Y. Hilton, Dante Moncrief, Jack Doyle. I love Jack Doyle as a sleeper this year. But honestly, without Andrew Luck, all due respect to Scott Tolzien, he is not Andrew Luck. So their values take a big hit.
Matt Berry, you've been such a good sport. We really appreciate you joining us. You will be joining us once every hour. You'll be back. We will not make you dress up into a stupid costume. Don't worry about that. I'm glad you were here, and I'm also glad that you are an all-knowing deity. Okay, it is time for our favorite game, something that we do almost every day on the Jalen Jacoby Show. It's a simple game called Soft Move or Boss Move. It doesn't need explanation.
One of the greatest ideas you've ever come up with.
There is no idea that I have. We are a team here at Jalen and Jacoby. Everything comes from the staff. And by that, I mean the staff, not you. Ready? Fantasy Football Marathon special version presented by DraftKings. Special version of Soft Move or Boss Move. Jalen Rose,
yes,
Soft Move or Boss Move? Having an auction draft.
So first off, there are certain terms I don't use a lot. I'm going to use one right now.
Okay.
You've probably never heard me use this. I hate that. Soft move.
Wait, what? Have you ever participated in a fantasy auction draft?
I have.
Okay. Let me see. Now, we have a very serious disagreement here. Here's the thing about the snake draft. You take long periods of time. It takes 4 hours, and you are active. You are actually doing something for I don't know, maybe 19 minutes of those 4 hours. During an auction draft, you are locked in every single second of the 4 hours. Auction draft is the way to go. It takes more strategy, and there's no downtime during the drafting period. When you are drafting in a snake draft, you're always doing something else at the same time. Watching power, on the other windows of your laptop or whatever. When you are in an auction draft, you are on the entire time.
That's what happens when you're watching a football game. Guess what happens when the play stops? They go to a huddle. Mm-hmm. And then you're walking to the refrigerator, you're talking to the person next to you, you're flicking back and forth on the channel. That's what continues to happen when you're watching the game anyway.
That's your argument?
Yes.
That it mirrors the actual game of football?
Correct.
So you're saying the draft experience should have the same downtime as the football game? That's your argument?
Absolutely.
That logic is flawed. It's so flawed. I'm not even going to respond to it.
You're watching
3
hours and 30 minutes of football, but they're only really playing a portion of that time.
Soft move or boss move? Auto drafting the last 3 rounds because you get bored.
Seriously.
I do this every year.
Not seriously.
Every year.
There's certain people, there's certain things you can do where I judge you. If you're walking through the airport and you got one of those rings around your neck, I'm judging you.
Okay, that's
As
fair.
a pillow, I'm judging you.
I know.
And you shouldn't do that. If this is what you do in fantasy draft, this is a soft move. I'm judging you.
I do this for the last 3 rounds. I just get bored.
That's when you get the sleeper.
That's when you get the people that you're going to waive by like Wednesday.
You get a kicker?
I mean? No, the kicker. You can just get a kicker off the waiver wire. Like, I really honestly feel like we should all just auto draft the last 3 rounds.
No, not at all.
Boss move.
Soft move.
Soft move or boss move? Totally fleecing the guy that has no knowledge in your league into a bad trade.
Well, you shouldn't be in the league where somebody you could take advantage of. That's a bad league anyway.
That's a good league.
No. So I think, however, that's a boss move.
It's a boss move.
You got to find a way to win the league at some point. That's like people didn't think I know who Twister was on the Tell the Truth.
As the commissioner vetoing a trade that you don't like because it helps another team.
That's a boss move by the commish.
See, that's the thing.
It avoids what you just said.
I've heard you get in trouble for talking about commissioners, so I'm going to move on. Soft move or boss move?
That's very nice, sir.
Texting trash talk to your opponent all week long before the game.
That's a soft move.
Me too. That's what I think too. Too much effort.
That's too much.
You know, at the day of the game or during the experience. But when I start getting like the trash talk text on Tuesday, it's like, what? This isn't going to get better.
And also, here's the thing. This fantasy draft is great, but I have other issues in my life I have to attend to.
Yes,
like,
exactly.
Don't be hitting me on Wednesday at 9 o'clock about a fantasy game on Sunday.
Yes, yeah.
You know,
oh, did you hear the news? So-and-so's on the injury report. Like, okay, I get it. You're going to win.
I'm trying to take my kids to school. Sit down.
Soft move or boss move? Watching the red zone while your favorite team is playing.
Soft move.
Oh, it's a boss move. I do this.
No.
I know you do this too.
No.
Jalen,
I'm watching my squad. And then I'm going back and forth to red zone, not the other way around.
Here's the thing is first of all, I've seen your remote skills. You talk about them a lot. They're not great. They're not great. You talk about how great you are on the remote. I know you check in on the Lions game, but you stay on red zone, okay? You miss a lot of Lions possessions because you're on red zone.
Well, that's because we won one playoff game in the last 50 years.
That's fair. Maybe if your team was better, you would actually watch them. Soft move or boss move, never going to an actual game in the stadium because it's harder to check in on your fantasy team.
Soft move. And let me piggyback that. Stop claiming teams that you've never gone to see play.
Oh, really? I do that. You know me. I'm a die easy fan.
Okay. At least go to one game every
teams all the time.
Other season.
Oh, no.
People acting like they diehard fans and ain't never been to the arena.
I feel like the in-arena experience is becoming lesser and lesser valued every single year that goes by. I would much rather be on my couch channel surfing with free food and beverage than at the arena 2 hours before in the parking lot giving high fives to strangers.
That's a misconception. That beverage ain't free. That food ain't free. You went to the supermarket and bought that, sir.
You just key in. Okay, let's move on. Soft move or boss move? Giving up and not checking back in on your team after 4 weeks.
I hate people like that. That's a soft move.
That's me every year.
You did that last year. You are that guy. Die easy fantasy football player. Jalen Jacoby had a fancy league with our entire staff. Somebody won. They never got paid because it was never me and you.
Once I go 0-3, it's just like, no, I'm not even making the playoffs.
No, I got to add one to this. I have to add one to this.
You're not allowed to.
I need you guys' help. Seriously.
You don't prepare for the show. You're not allowed to start.
This is the only preparation I'm going to add to this 5-hour program and a graveyard shift. Soft move or boss move having more than one quarterback in the starting lineup?
We're going to address that later. That's in the rundown, actually. Last year, one of our producers set up the league 2-quarterback lineup. Soft move or boss move? Last place punishments.
That's a boss move.
I think it's a boss move, too, because it keeps people like me who give up on the league from just dropping down to last place. If there were negative repercussions for last place, just like there's positive repercussions for first place, you can get relegated out of the league. You have to, go eat something or do a tattoo thing or, host the draft next year, whatever it is. I think there should be negative repercussions for last place.
Soft move or boss move, getting your favorite team when you lose a fantasy draft tattooed on you.
No, I'm not getting a tattoo. You crazy? Tattoos are forever. Soft move or boss move? Pre-gaming beers for 10 a.m. West Coast football on Sundays.
Boss move.
Too early.
No, it's not.
No. I've tried this before. It does not work.
No.
You start at 9 a.m. By the time the Sunday night game is on, you have no idea what's happening. You won't remember it. Like, look at this. I've tried this once. Breakfast in bed with the Miller High Life. It just does not work. My robe is much more fly than that.
For the people that's
much more colors on that.
For the people that's been following this program for 6 years,
My pillows
you're
look great.
officially old man Jacoby.
You're right.
This is married Jacoby with 3 kids talking. First off, you ever heard of a Bloody Mary? That's how you started. Okay, and then you ease your way into the other drinks. Then you go beer, and then the later you go wine.
That's not how it works.
It is how it goes.
That's not how it works, Jalen.
Blue Moon is brewed with Valencia orange peel and a touch of coriander. It's a creative twist on a Belgian-style wheat ale for a taste that shines brighter. Taste responsibly. Blue Moon Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
We are being joined by one of our favorites. Anita Marks is here. Anita, what's happening? Anita, you there?
I am here.
Awesome.
I am here. I am so ready for you at 5 o'clock in the morning.
Perfect.
Did I just say that on national television? Okay.
I'm moving on. It is time for Sleepers, Deep Sleepers, and Team Ambien. A very appropriate transition. So everyone is looking for sleepers. Who are the people out there that other gyms in their league are not considering? So we've broken them up into regular sleepers, the deep sleepers, and in a nod to Tiger Woods, the Team Ambien. So who are your sleepers, Anita?
You have some medicinal in the system, too.
All right, so sleepers at the quarterback. And let me just preface by saying this is how you win your fantasy football league. Is that you find a lot of value, okay? You find a lot of value in your picks. And so, for example, the quarterback position, huge sleeper for me this year is Marcus Mariota. I am not going after the Tom Brady's and the Drew Brees and the Aaron Rodgers. I'm waiting for anywhere between rounds 8 through 11. And that's where Marcus Mariota is going to be sitting, waiting for me to draft him. They have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. You add Eric Decker. They drafted Corey Davis. They've got Matthews, Delaney Walker, one of the best tight ends in the NFL. He's got a plethora of talent to work with, and he's got a great offensive line. I love me some Marcus Mariota. He's going to put up some great points this year.
Who else do you have in your sleeper category?
All right, so let's go through it. The running back category, Kareem Hunt. Now, right now, Spencer Ware is the #1 running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, but everything you hear Andy Reid talk about this young man, and running backs actually thrive in that Kansas City offense. And the way that Andy Reid, he just, Westbrook, LaShawn McCoy, Jamal Charles, if you recall, I mean, all these running backs had such success. He will as well. At the wide receiver position, are you ready? Brace yourself. We're talking about Tyrell Williams. Now, last year, the San Diego Chargers had what was that? Why the sad face?
He's not sad. He was thinking about
okay, I thought you said.
and they're in Los Angeles now.
He was thinking about House Tyrell in Game of Thrones. That's what it is.
Don't we all? But here's the thing. Last year, the Chargers, of course, they had a ton of injuries. So Williams was able to step up. Now, Keenan Allen is back, but he is injury prone. They drafted Mike Williams. He's having some back issues. This is a guy, he's 6'5". And just last year had such a great year, great connection with Phillip Rivers. This is a guy that if he's available in the late rounds, a great wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 to have on your roster, just in case if the Chargers have issues with health again, Tyrell Williams is there for you. Last but not least, at the tight end position, Jack Doyle. Because Dwayne Allen, he's gone. He's now with the New England Patriots. The Colts love to pass the ball to their tight ends, especially in the red zone. The Colts paid this guy $19 million, and for a reason. I think he's going to have a monster year, and this is a tight end. Again, I will say, this is how you win your fantasy football leagues, is value, and you're going to get great value with Jack Doyle in the later rounds.
So I want to caution our audience, because Anita, you're in 75 fantasy leagues. You absolutely know exactly what you're talking about. But these are your sleepers. Don't pick these people in round 2. These are late round pickups.
No, this is very important. We're talking, and now we're getting into deep sleepers, right?
Yes,
now we're going now the second layer of deep sleepers. This is what you want to talk about? All right, let's talk about another quarterback, Carson Wentz. Again, another team that has arguably one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. They add Alshon Jeffrey, okay? They add Torrey Smith. They bring in LeGarrette Blount. You have Zach Ertz, Darren Sproles, again, plethora of talent, a great offensive line, and I love Carson Wentz. I think he's really fantastic. He's very deceiving. He's going to run the ball. He's more athletic than you think he is. He's going to run the football. He's going to score touchdowns in the air and on the ground. Carson Wentz, a great QB2 for you to stash, and some great matchups, favorable matchups on the defensive side of the ball. You start him, he's going to win some games for you. And here's a guy you guys got to really, really lock in and remember. Samaje Perine. Now, this is a running back right now in Washington. Rob Kelly's the number 1 running back. Mark my words, by the end of the season, Perine will be the lead back for the Washington Redskins.
Wow.
This kid is unbelievable. He is the most talented running back on their roster. Has not had a great camp, did not look great in preseason, but this kid is going to come on and watch. He's going to leapfrog over Rob Kelly. He's the running back you want to own in the backfield for the Washington Redskins. At the wide receiver position, Adam Thielen, wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings. Get this, he was targeted 96 times last year. He only dropped one ball 96 times. Also, he's averaging 14 yards per catch. It's unbelievable. So love him as a deep sleeper. And last but not least, tight end Dwayne Allen. I just talked about him leaving Indianapolis. Now he's in New England. If you listened to Stephania Bell earlier on our fantasy football marathon, she broke down all the reasons why Gronk has not been able to stay healthy. And you got to keep in mind, I mean, I just don't think Gronk is going to stay healthy for an entire season. Dwayne Allen could be a huge target for Tom Brady and the New England Patriots, especially in the red zone.
And now we have the team ambient. These players are not on your radar.
No.
Anita is here to put them on your radar. Don't draft them, but keep an eye on them.
Kind of like the people that watch our show at 5 in the morning.
Oh, give yourselves more credit than that. So here we go. Team ambient. Alex Smith, I know, brace yourself. Here's why. I love Tyreek Hill. Love him. I think he's going to do some great things for this offense, as well as Travis Kelce. And you've got Pat Mahomes, you've got Alex Smith, who has to look over his back. This is a young kid who's going to really make some noise in the NFL. Alex Smith has to come out and have a great season this season to stay the starting quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs. Jamal Williams, a running back for the Green Bay Packers. They went out, they drafted him. Ty Montgomery is their number 1. Jamal Williams will get a lot of work. He's an excellent running back, and this is a guy that, again, you can get in the later rounds. How about Devin Funchess, wide receiver for the Carolina Panthers? Not hearing great things about Kelvin Benjamin right now. Devin Funchess is the one, played all 9 snaps with the first team in preseason game number 1, and everything I'm hearing about him in camp is that he's looking great. The chemistry between him and I'm sure Cam Newton, they're going to pick up where they left off once Cam Newton gets back on the field. And last but not least, Austin Seferian-Jenkins, tight end for the Jets. Hear me out. Quincy Enunwa is out for the season. He's injured. The Jets are going to be horrible. They're going to be down the majority of the time. They're going to have to go to the air. They're going to have to pass the ball a lot. Who's going to get those targets? Austin Seferian-Jenkins. He's stopped drinking. He's the healthiest he's been. He knows this is a tremendous opportunity, even though the Jets they'll be lucky if they win one game. But this is a tremendous opportunity for him as a player, and if you own him in fantasy. So again, I'm not into owning 2 tight ends in fantasy, but if you need to, Austin Seferian-Jenkins, I think he's going to get a ton of targets, and he'll probably put up some really solid fantasy points for you.
Anita Marks, that is extremely helpful. How many leagues are you going to be in this year?
I'm in 12 right now, but I have a feeling that I know, but I'm in leagues that I've been in forever. Remember Best Damn Sports Show period?
Yes, indeed.
So I know what you guys were like babies when that show was on. I was in that original fantasy league. So I've just been in leagues forever, and I can't walk away from them.
Anita, I have to tell you a secret.
I feel like I'm not even formulating sentences at this hour.
No,
I'm sorry.
Please, that was extremely helpful. I'm not just saying that.
I hope I've been helpful. I feel like I'm speaking like a foreign language, but hopefully I've been helpful for you guys tonight.
And I was a part of the Best Damn family as well.
Welcome back to the Fantasy Football Marathon presented by our friends at DraftKings. It's starting to get fun, Jalen Rose. Right now on the East Coast, it is right around 4:42 in the morning.
And we are naming sponsors? Yes!
Yep.
We made
DraftKings.
Yes!
They're not sponsoring our show. They're sponsoring the Fantasy Football Marathon, Jalen Rose. Don't worry. It's starting to get fun. We were supposed to have Adam Schefter in this segment. Anita Marks, our co-host, one of the people who's joined us through this marathon, tweeted a picture of Adam Schefter. Guess what he was doing?
Probably sleep, since he's going to be on television for 24 straight hours.
Here we have the tote board. We've got about 1,138,000 people have joined. He was asleep. Adam Marks take a picture of him. Guess what? Now he's not available to come on television with us.
Totally makes sense.
I've got word. Do we have Adam Schefter? We have Adam Schefter, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, we do.
We have Adam Schefter, sans blazer. I like this, Adam Schefter. You got a little cash.
Well, I think if I'm going to wear a medical coat in the last segment, I can wear my regular shirt in this segment.
Thank you so much for playing along with us. It's very nice of you. And you're also about to play a game that we call Keep It Movin'. We do this all the time on the show. We've paid a lot of money for Method Man, and we use it. But this time is a different twist. This is Keep It Movin' because these are players that have moved from one team to another, and we look to you to give us the insight on how that will affect their fantasy performance this season. Jalen Rose has the first player up.
I do, all day. Adrian Peterson from Minnesota to New Orleans.
Well, listen, playing last season, it's hard to do much worse than he did. So going to New Orleans in that offense with those wide receivers, with Sean Payton's imagination, it'll help Adrian Peterson this year. I know he's another year older, but he's not running behind that Vikings offensive line, and he will have better numbers this year than he did last year, which isn't saying much. So Adrian Peterson on the move, good for him.
Okay, so Adrian Peterson will be better this year than last year, Schefter?
Better.
It's gonna be. He ruined my team last year, Schefter. I'm never drafting that man again, no matter what.
Okay,
player that had good numbers last year, could they get better? I'm talking about Deshaun Jackson moving from Washington to Tampa Bay.
I think they stay about the same. I have to give you an answer, right? So I'll say that he's going to be better because of the threat of Mike Evans. But again, I think it's similar. He had pretty good numbers in Washington last year, and I think he's going to have pretty good numbers in Tampa. I think they're going to be comparable. I don't have a great feeling one way or another. I don't think he's much better. I don't think he's much worse. I think Deshaun Jackson is going to be consistent in this offense. I know that might not be exactly what you're looking for, but that's what I believe.
How about Brandon Marshall changing teams in New York from the Jets to the Giants?
I think he does better. I think he does better with the Giants because of the threat of Odell Beckham Jr., Sterling Shepard, Eli Manning. You look at who's getting him the football last year, the players around him. There are upgrades all around. There were so many injuries in New York last year that he had to contend with. There was losing. He got frustrated. These Giants will win. He'll be interested. He'll be focused. Brandon Marshall, better numbers.
He only had 59 receptions last year, which were the fewest since his rookie year. Shout to our researcher, Schwartz Center. Next up, we have Terrell Pryor going from Cleveland to Washington.
He was a breakout player last year. His numbers will be even better this year in Washington. Washington lost Deshaun Jackson. It lost Pierre Garçon. It needs somebody to take over, especially if Jordan Reed continues nursing the latest injury that he has, a foot injury. So Terrell Pryor will have better numbers in Washington than he did last season in Cleveland.
How about Brandon Cooks from the Saints to the champs, New England Patriots?
Yeah, I think last year was 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns, and I think Brandon Cooks is going to be even better in the New England offense. And I know there are a lot of weapons, but the Patriots love him. They think that he's special. And there are not many players in the league that I think the Patriots would be willing to go trade their first-round draft pick for. And they did that for Brandon Cooks. And I think they view him as a Tom Brady of wide receivers. He's one of the last guys to leave at work. He's one of the hardest working guys. He's one of the most well-liked guys. He's the kind of guy that if you had a daughter, you'd want her to marry him. And I think that translates on and off the field. And Brandon Cooks will have better numbers than he did in New Orleans.
Little tidbit from Brandon Cooks. 2,311 receiving yards over the last 2 seasons, with his 8th most in the NFL, and now he's going to be catching balls thrown by Tom Brady. Next, Alshon Jeffrey, who goes from the Bears to the Eagles.
Well, last year he was hurt. He was suspended. He didn't have great numbers last year, so he has to be better. Now, Philadelphia does need somebody to step up at that position. It just traded Jordan Matthews on Friday to Buffalo. Torrey Smith is there. Again, I think he's better by default as much as anything else because Philadelphia needs somebody. Chicago, he struggled in last year due to a variety of factors. Alshon Jeffrey has better numbers.
How about the quarterback position? Mike Glennon from Tampa Bay to Chicago.
Well, he was on the bench last year, so his numbers will be better, but I don't know if they're going to be good enough to hold Mitchell Trubisky up. Mitchell Trubisky was the star of the preseason in week 1 for whatever that's worth. He showed like he was exactly what the Bears thought he was when they traded up to get him at the 2nd overall spot. If Trubisky plays like that, Glennon may have better numbers, but they may not be numbers that he polished for long before Trubisky takes over that job.
And finally, another player that completely tanked my fantasy season last year. Sammy, if he is healthy, Watkins goes from the Bills to the Rams.
I think he'll have better numbers this year. I know that some might not think so, but again, I think you're going to play for an imaginative offensive coach in Sean McVay. I know there are questions about the quarterback, and they're going to have to figure that out and see whether Jared Goff can emerge. And that's a big factor here in terms of whether Sammy Watkins' numbers improve or don't improve from last year. But again, last year he was so banged up and so limited in what he could and did do that this year is an improvement. Now, if the Rams can get good, consistent quarterback play, his numbers definitely be better. If they don't get that good, consistent quarterback play, his numbers won't be better at all.
Thank you so much for keeping it moving with us. When you come back, I hope you continue this trend of getting more and more casual. You know, maybe like a T-shirt or an undershirt or something.
The next one I'm doing next segment, we'll be doing my boxer shorts.
We saw you sleeping. Anita Marks, one of our friends and colleagues here on this show, tweeted a picture of you sleeping.
Yeah,
How long? How long was that nap? We're looking at it right now. How long do those naps last?
Exactly. Sleeping is when you're in bed, okay? This is called napping. That's not sleeping. In your dress shirt, in a studio, in a chair, that's not sleeping. That's napping.
A quick tidbit about my colleague and co-host here, Jalen Rose. He sleeps all the time. Every car ride he sleeps, every movie he sleeps. He sleeps in production meetings. However, he has this sixth sense. If you point a phone at him to take a picture, he immediately wakes up and winks at you. I have no idea how he does it.
I don't have that sixth sense that Jalen did. They taught him that in Michigan. I didn't take that class.
Well, you've got all the information that we need on the Fantasy Football Marathon. Thank you so much for joining us.
Blue Moon is brewed with Valencia orange peel and a touch of coriander. It's a creative twist on a Belgian-style wheat ale for a taste that shines brighter. Taste responsibly. Blue Moon Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
Now it's time for Rookies Worth the Risk.
Okay.
And, of course, we are bringing in our guest. Matthew Berry is back.
Yes.
No stupid costume this time, Matt. Thank you so much for indulging us last time
yeah,
you were here on the show.
Question for you guys.
Uh-oh.
How much of the fact that 0% of ESPN executives are watching you guys translates to your success? I feel like that's a big part of the Jalen and Jacoby brand.
We don't feel like we're being watched.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's
like,
not work.
We don't feel like we're supervised. You know, we feel like we have a substitute teacher today every day we're on the show. And it's like, hey, man, my name's Dave. And you see this plan for today? We're just going to throw it out.
We don't get 15 emails for the show.
Nah.
We don't do the show in the meeting. We don't know what we're going to say.
We don't do a meeting.
We don't prepare.
See, I feel like you're right. I feel like they say, like, Jalen Jacoby, how's that doing? Like, oh, yeah, I saw Jalen on the NBA. He's doing great. Yeah. Good. Like, that's what I think happens. I think they see Jalen on NBA and they assume the show is just, oh, yeah, and then Jacoby probably asked him about players. And, yeah, they have no idea what's going on here.
Keep expectations low.
Exactly.
So,
that's been the secret of my success.
You are about to set expectations for some people that we have never seen play on Sunday before. We're going to talk about rookies in the league. Jalen is very invested in this segment for some reason. The first time it's happened in like 6 years.
That's the word.
Really is. So, Jalen, I'm going to toss to you now. What's the first rookie you want to hear about?
Absolutely. So we saw breakout rookie campaigns from Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott, Tyreek Hill, Sterling Shepard, to name a few. I'm going to name you a few rookies, and you tell me if they're worth drafting, especially because you think they're going to have a breakout season.
Okay.
First and foremost, Dalvin Cook, running back, Minnesota.
Yeah, they like him a lot. I think if you saw that preseason game in week 1, like, first couple passes right to Dalvin Cook, very explosive. They like him a lot in Minnesota, and he's currently going in the 6th round, so I don't mind that price in a PPR league, going as running back 20. I think that's about right. I don't love the offensive line in Minnesota, but I do think Pat Shurmur's offense is a perfect fit for what Dalvin Cook does well, one of the reasons they drafted him.
How about Leonard Fournette, running back, Jacksonville?
love Leonard Fournette.
Wow.
Oh, my God. Fournette's going to have just a monster year. I don't know if you saw that quote from Doug Marrone, head coach of the Jaguars, saying when he asked him how often did he want Blake Bortles to throw it, he said 0. And was not kidding.
I did see that.
He was not kidding. He wants to win with his defense and grind it out. When he was the head coach in Buffalo, he ran 7th most in the NFL in terms of run percentage. And Fournette's just a beast, man. Listen, I'm 6 foot 195. Like, I'm not a small guy. And I met him, and I felt so tiny. Like, he is a beast of a man. Like, I sat next to Leonard Fournette. I'm like, how are you and I built with the same DNA? Like, it's unbelievable. Anyway, so the Jags actually, believe it or not, 9th best in the NFL last year in yards before first contact per rush. This is a team that can actually block if they can get a sustained drive, and that's what I think they will with Leonard Fournette.
But also, if your coach says he never wants you to throw the ball, that's not good for the quarterback.
It's not good for the quarterback. Yeah, Blake Bortles is not high on him, but he's not a rookie. Who's the next rookie, Jalen?
How about Christian McCaffrey, running back of the Carolina Panthers?
Yeah, he's going a little bit high for my taste, but
I wonder why.
He's currently going running back 14, but make no mistake, he is a special, special player. Ron Rivera talking about how they want to use him the way he was basically used at Stanford. And that means, at Stanford he was touching the ball basically 27 times a game. I don't know if that happens at an NFL level, but they will run him between the tackles. You saw that in the preseason game. Obviously, they're going to put him in space, do different things. At practice, we were hearing from David Newton, our Panthers reporter, how they're working on bubble screens and quick slants, stuff that the Panthers haven't normally done in previous years. They want to get him in space and let him create yards after the catch. So McCaffrey's a special player.
How about Corey Davis of the Tennessee Titans, wide receiver?
Yeah, not convinced necessarily on him. Love the talent of him. Love him in Dynasty. But you think about, first off, he's been banged up. You never like it when a rookie quarterback can't get on the field to get that connection with his quarterback. And you think about the Tennessee Titans with Rashard Matthews and Delaney Walker coming back, both who had big years. They sign Eric Decker. They get Eric Decker. So now there's a lot of competitions for balls on a team that is run first. So you've got DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry in the backfield. So I'm just not convinced Corey Davis going where he's going. I think there are other wide receivers in redraft leagues that might provide more value than Corey Davis based on where he's going.
This next pick was controversial.
Don't get fired, Jalen.
Joe Mixon, running back, Cincinnati Bengals.
I think Joe Mixon has a huge year.
Really?
Cincinnati is a team that wants to run the ball. Last 4 years, the only teams with over the two teams that have run the ball the most over the last 4 years, Carolina Panthers, Cincinnati Bengals. And while I think Jeremy Hill and Giovanni Bernard are going to be involved, Joe Mixon is the best running back on that team right now. True three down talent. My belief is that you do not draft a guy like Joe Mixon with the off-the-field baggage that he brings to just keep him around because you need running back depth. I believe they think he is a special football player, and my expectation is he wins the job sooner rather than later and has a big fantasy year. Yeah.
You can understand why a lot of owners would hesitate to draft him, can't you?
If you do not want to root for Joe Mixon, I completely understand that. I certainly understand that. I think there are going to be a lot of fantasy owners, honestly, that do not want to draft him specifically for that. Look, fantasy is supposed to be fun, and you want to root for your player. So I certainly understand why you would not want to root for him. But you're asking me, how do I think he'll do in the NFL in terms of fantasy football? I think he's going to do very well.
This next rookie is joining what potentially is going to be an explosive offense in Tampa Bay. Tight end, O.J. Howard.
Yeah, not crazy about O.J. Howard. Look, I thought this was a great move for the Buccaneers. He's a real weapon. But honestly, from a fantasy perspective, Cameron Brate is still there. I think you'll see O.J. Howard block more than be a fantasy force. Remember, in the last 10 years, the best fantasy season by a rookie tight end was Rob Gronkowski. He had 154 fantasy points. Last year, that was basically Jason Witten. Just to give you an idea of how hard it is for a tight end to be fantasy relevant, it just doesn't happen very often. We saw Hunter Henry have some nice moments last year, but ultimately I think O.J. Howard is a bigger name than fantasy production. Again, love him in Dynasty, love him for the Buccaneers, not crazy about him in fantasy.
While we're talking tight ends, let me throw another one at you. Evan Ingram of the Giants.
Yeah, the Giants just haven't, like, a talented guy, and he's not really a tight end. I mean, he's like, they're going to split him out wide. So he's a big wide receiver, but you've got Beckham, you've got Brandon Marshall, who I do think has a big year. Obviously, Sterling Shepard's still there. So again, this is another one where I thought it was a good move for the Giants and helps Eli Manning. Hard for me to see consistent fantasy value out of Evan Ingram initially. The Giants so far, maybe this is a chicken or the egg kind of thing. The Giants just haven't really used their tight end, and is that because they haven't had a tight end, or are they not having a good tight end because they don't use one? And so we'll see with Evan Ingram, but at the moment I think he's a tight end too, a mid-tier tight end too.
And you know people get excited about the quarterback position, so much so it seemed like this guy was inducted into the Hall of Fame after his first preseason game in Chicago. Mitch Trubisky.
Yeah, I don't. First off, hard to have fantasy success if you're not the starter. And as of right now, they're saying Mike Glennon's the guy. You got to get on the field. You got to get on the field to actually score fantasy points. Important tip for you kids out there. So I think Trubisky, look, he looked really good. It's a preseason game. It's vanilla defense is back, but no doubt about it. Trubisky looked terrific in that game. And my expectation is he wins this job sooner rather than later. And I think when he wins the job, actually, he becomes an interesting QB, too, because I do think that the Bears' offense is going to be better than people think. Do I think it's going to be great? No. But I think it's going to be passable, no pun intended. Like, this is a team that put up fantasy points last year. Brian Hoyer had a couple of nice weeks there. Matt Barkley had a couple of nice weeks there. So I think Trubisky in that offense actually could put up some points in sort of a QB2, QB 15 to 20 sort of way, bye-week filling kind of guy. And certainly his dynasty prospects are bright.
Very quick, Matt Berry. Soft move or boss move? He insisted we call him Mitchell instead of Mitch.
Yeah. What is it? Boss move or what? What's the other one?
Soft move or boss move?
Or a boss.
Yeah, soft move. Soft move.
I agree. No doubt about it. This next guy, I think, fell into a terrific situation. A defensive-oriented team that made the playoffs and still struggled at the quarterback position. Deshaun Watson of the Texans.
Yeah, again, he's not the starter right now. It's Tom Savage. Like him a lot in Dynasty as well, although I will say my favorite Dynasty quarterback is Pat Mahomes, the Chiefs. But Deshaun Watson, when he gets the job, will have fantasy value because of his mobility. We saw it in the preseason game in Week 1 where he ran in for a touchdown. So mobile quarterbacks obviously have tremendous value in fantasy. So I could see him having legit QB2 numbers this year once he gets the job, but doesn't have the job. So he's being drafted. It's weird. If you look on ESPN.com and our ADP, our average draft position, he's being drafted ahead of guys like Phillip Rivers, Carson Wentz, Carson Palmer, Tyrod Taylor, which is like guys that actually have jobs, that have had proven success in the NFL and fantasy. And I'm just like, I get it. He's a national champion, but like, can he get the job first?
A lot of those people that are drafting him that high are watching this program at 4 in the morning.
That's right.
It might be.
And they'll be watching your program every day. We're so excited about your new show, Matt.
Congratulations.
That's a really good look. Thank you so much for coming on. You'll be back joining us later. No production drop-off from you throughout this fantasy marathon. I'm very impressed by your performance. We're playing a different game. This one's called Negative Jacoby.
Oh, no.
Oh, wow.
So
this guy, you see what I got to do?
Jalen is very positive.
I'll be the negative Nelly.
Jalen is
Go ahead.
positive. I like to go negative. I like to focus on the negative in life. Jalen likes to focus on the positive. So I'm going to name some players that I'm going negative on this year, and you're going to explain to me whether or not I'm just in doing so. One person I'm negative on, always a sophomore slump, especially with quarterbacks. I'm negative on Dak Prescott. Fair or unfair?
Very fair. Number one, he's lost his star-studded running back, right? Ezekiel Elliott, he's out for, if the 6-game suspension holds true, they have a bye week in there. If he doesn't get him back until week 8. So without Zeke, on top of that, I mean, look, defensive coordinators have had an entire offseason to prepare, look at film and prepare for Dak Prescott. On top of that, Des Bryant injury prone, Jason Witten, with all due respect, long in the tooth. I'm with you. Dak Prescott is not on my draft board. He's not a guy. And also keep in mind, a lot of Dallas Cowboy fans out there, they're going to be drafting him way early. No value in Dak Prescott for me this year.
I didn't hear anything about their great offensive line. I didn't hear anything about the resurgence of Des Bryant hoping to become an elite receiver again
injury
in so many people's eyes.
Thank you,
I'm just
Anita.
not rolling with that.
Thank you, Anita.
What did he have, like 15 screws in the foot by now? I mean, no. Again, I think there's better value. value. I think there's more value quarterbacks like a Kirk Cousins, like a Cam Newton, like a Marcus Mariota. I think that will put up just as much points, if not more, for you, and you can get in the later rounds.
I am positive on all of those quarterbacks you just mentioned, but negative on the next one. Big year last year for him. Again, down year this year. I'm going negative on Derek Carr. Fair or unfair?
Yeah, I think very fair. It's unfortunately he plays in this dink and dunk offense. So a lot of his yardage, a lot of his points come from yards after the catch with his receivers. How about this? His receivers, third worst wide receiving core in the NFL in regard to drop passes. So they've got to hold on to the ball. It's not happening. So I'm with you. Derek Carr, I think, would be drafted a lot sooner than where I want to take him.
I'm rolling with that, and I'm disappointed that the Oakland Raiders are actually leaving the Bay to go play in Las Vegas.
One more thing. I can't leave out Marshawn Lynch. They get in the red zone. Who's going to give him the ball? They're not going to do what Seattle did when they were trying to beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. No, they're actually going to give the ball to Marshawn Lynch on the 1 yard line.
Facts on facts on facts.
Another thing is he just signed a $70 million contract. Hard to play is hard. It just happens. Hard to play is hard once you have all that money in your pocket. Next, I'm going negative on Matt Forte. Fair or unfair?
Yeah, very fair. For me, the running back I want to own in that Jets backfield is Bilal Powell. Matt Forte, 31 years old. On top of that, keep in mind, this is a Jets team, arguably probably one of the, if not the worst team in the NFL. I think they're going to be behind a lot. I think they're going to have to pass a lot, whether it's Josh McCown or Hackenberg. The one player that I do like, by the way, is Austin Seferian-Jenkins. I think he's going to get a lot of targets with Quincy Enunwa out. But either of those running backs, I don't want to own. I don't want them on. We're agreeing on a lot of things here, Jacoby. This is kind of weird.
It's because we're both extremely negative people, and that's great. Come to the dark side. This is my side. I'm also going negative on Mark Ingram. Fair or unfair?
Yeah, 2 words for you. Adrian Peterson. And word out of New Orleans is that his teammates are gushing. Their jaws are dropping at practice because he's totally blowing it up. So, this is a backfield I think that's going to give you a headache because there's a lot of talent back there, of course, with both Mark Ingram and Adrian Peterson. But for me, if I was going to own one of those running backs, it'd be Adrian Peterson. Man, think about this. Has he ever played with a quarterback as good as Drew Brees on a fast track? In the dome? I think Adrian Peterson really could have a monster year, and his ADP, you could get him a lot of value with Adrian Peterson, not so much with Mark Ingram.
I drafted him in the first round last year. I will never draft Adrian Peterson again. That will just not happen.
Stand up. Don't sleep on Flint Town.
That will not just happen. This one I think we might disagree on.
Y'all gonna disagree on this one. Y'all might fist fight about this one, Anita. You're gonna have to come on our Wednesday crush.
I was just gonna say, I'm in Bristol. You guys are out west. I can't reach. I'm not Conor McGregor.
You gonna fist fight him for this one. Wait till you hear this.
I'm going negative on Odell Beckham Jr. this year. Overvalued.
What are you talking about? You know what? And I covered the Giants for 9 years. Here's my thing. I think you could go. I think this is a toss-up, right? But I am leaning more towards I'd rather own an Antonio Brown, a Julio Jones than Odell Beckham Jr. There is a plethora of talent now on that offense with the Giants, right? They bring in Brandon Marshall. They draft Evan Ingram. Keep in mind, Sterling Shepard, most touchdowns out of any slot receiver last year. He scored 8 touchdowns. There is one ball. You've got Eli Manning, who's, as Jerry Reese said, he's in his back 9, which means he's a little old, and their offensive line is one of the worst in the NFL. I think there's other top-notch wide receivers I want to own more so than this dude right here with the cool hair.
It's great hair, though. Great hair. I would pick him early in the hair
I'm
league.
jealous. Not
in
gonna lie.
In a hair keeper
envy.
league, I would definitely keep him. Finally, I'm going negative on Amari Cooper.
Okay, and that's fair. Only targeted 14% of the time in the red zone. Michael Crabtree is the big guy that is targeted for the Oakland Raiders. And as I said earlier, I mean, they have Marshawn Lynch. I'm with you. Amari Cooper is a guy that, again, the way that you win your fantasy leagues is you find great value. Amari Cooper is going to be drafted in a round that I'm going to find value with another wide receiver that at the end of the day is going to score more touchdowns for me than Amari Cooper will.
Anita, thank you so much for joining us here on Jalen and Jacoby.
Always fun, but we got it's better when we're in the same studio. This is kind of like it's not as intimate.
What happens is
I can use the word intimate, right? It's 3 a.m. I can use the word
Jalen
intimate.
only flies private now. They didn't have it in the budget. He only flies private.
Okay.
And he wouldn't even let me on the plane. He flies alone and he flies private. That's how he flies now.
This is not true. We would love to have you on our program again. Please.
We would also love to have you back. You'll come back and join us soon, right?
Absolutely.
Great. We're excited about that. And we're
I'll
also
see you guys
excited to
in a
have
bit.
Matt Berry back to talk about some new faces, the rookies in the league this year. You're watching Jalen Jacoby Fantasy Football Marathon
Just a
presented
fantasy.
by Draft Kings. We wrap up the week with what we learned. And this is a special edition. This is what we learned last year playing fantasy football. For example, here's what we learned. Collect the money up front. You got to collect the money up front.
Yes.
Not that anybody wagers on their fantasy teams.
Well said.
Wagering on your fantasy teams is obviously
said.
just immoral
Well said.
and illegal and not something that we would ever do here. But if you are that type of person that does have a wager on your fantasy team, collect up front. Anyone who's ever been in a fantasy league has won a fantasy league has had to send multiple emails, had to chase people down,
That's just
get
how it
partial
works.
payments.
I mean, you got 10, 12, 15 people trying to pay. You ain't going to get it all the same day.
And here's the thing is
This is how it
you
goes.
want people to pay before they've lost. Because once you've lost, it's just a debt. But once if you're still in the running and you feel like you've got a good year, after your draft, you always like your team. That is when you should collect. So commissioners, that is when you should collect payment.
Number 2 is near and dear to your heart.
This one hurts.
The Adrian Peterson, and I know everybody's excited about what's going on in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. He's still Adrian Peterson.
And this, guess what? Oh, he's in New Orleans now, and all of his teammates love him in practice. And I watched him jump over a bunch of foam stack things. But everyone looks good in practice. Adrian Peterson has no trouble staying healthy in practice. He has trouble staying healthy and playing games. And if you're going to draft Adrian Peterson, don't do it first. That's what happened to me last year. He may get hurt.
And you're a die-easy fantasy football player as well.
Oh, yeah. Oh, if I start losing, if I go 0-3, 0-4, I'm done. I might not even set my lineup. I'm the commissioner. Text me 20 minutes before the game. Set your lineup. I'm like, no. I will tank a fantasy league. You don't want me in your fantasy league. Next, draft 8 running backs. 6 of them are going to get hurt.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah.
You need a lot of running backs in your roster. It might feel like, because when you have the draft experience, especially on the ESPN Fantasy Football app, I love the draft experience there. They show you your roster and they show you starting to fill out your roster. And for some reason, just because you're trained to think this way, you want to fill all those spots. You do not need to fill all those spots. You don't need a defense. You don't need a kicker. You probably want 4 running backs before you even start thinking about quarterbacks. It's a little counterintuitive.
And the running back position has made a resurgence over the last couple of seasons. Obviously, the wide receivers have dominated, but we're seeing some quality backs putting up big numbers in fantasy.
Mm-hmm. Shout to the Schulmabs. Next, drafting a suspended Tom Brady. Not a bad idea after all. One thing we learned last year.
Teflon Tom. Mm-hmm. He was not playing around.
No.
So much so when he got back, he set the league on fire and ended up winning the Super Bowl.
But here's the thing. They have a backup quarterback by the name of Jacoby Brissett. I'm drafting him first. I'm drafting Jacoby Brissett. Just like you're going to draft all the Jalens, I'm drafting Jacoby Brissett. Maybe he'll play running back. Who knows?
But here's the thing we can't front.
What?
Tom Brady, New England, great champions.
Doesn't eat strawberries.
But they did get caught cheating twice.
What are you talking about?
That did happen.
What are you talking about?
Let's not act like that didn't
What
happen.
are you talking about?
That did happen.
That is alleged. That has not been proven.
That happened.
That has not been proven.
It went down. We forget about it because they're great, but it went down.
Another thing we learned, and this is something that you always have to keep in mind, just like you have to count on injuries and running backs, you have to account on some medicinal intervention into your lineup.
Yes.
This happens from time to time here.
Martavius Bryant comes to mind. Right off top.
There are
Ezekiel Elliott in preseason comes to mind.
Martavius does come to mind. Le'Veon Bell, LeGarrette Blount. There are some prominent players that have a habitual medicinal habit that perhaps not ready to break quite yet.
There's some players that possibly got him out the league. Josh Brown.
Next.
Gordon.
Good job. That's why we have research here. Next. Even if you're 2-9, still set your lineup. Now, this is really for me. I wrote this one just for me.
Correct.
Because you can take your league down. There are 9 other people in your league. There are probably 6 other people that are still highly invested in this week-to-week thing. And if you don't set your lineup, if you don't try, what happens is you become an easy win for players. And that's so frustrating if you're in the hunt. This happened to me once because I've only been in the hunt once.
It did.
It's very frustrating.
And as somebody that's a die-hard fantasy football freak, the next one is really personal to me.
This is personal to everybody on this program.
Never let Reggie be the commissioner.
Don't let Reggie be the commissioner. Our audio producer, Reggie, is here.
I'm excited about picking teams. I'm like 2 quarterbacks, I'm done.
And that leads to our next thing. Don't have a league with 2 quarterbacks. Reggie was our commissioner, and we're all at draft, and we're on the fantasy football app on ESPN's Fantasy. We're looking at our phone. It's so easy. You can create a league like nothing. I've created 3 leagues since this segment started. And Reggie has 2 quarterbacks. Wait a second. Is it 2 starting quarterbacks?
Yes.
Don't do a 2 quarterback league. Is that the default setting? No. So you had the commissioner, Reggie, went in there and set a 2 quarterback league. Still salty about that. Another thing we learned, no one's going to be able to rush on the Cowboys. They led the league in 83.5 yards per game rushing given up last year.
Their defense did a terrific job.
Mm-hmm.
However, that could be misleading when you're able to control the football. And they were able to do that with their running game last year.
Yep, they were
Ezekiel Elliott.
They were ahead. That helps.
Their terrific offensive line. He's going to miss 6 games. I know they have a lot of depth at that spot. We'll see if Dak Prescott can take on that extra load. People sleeping on Dez Bryant this year.
This one's personal to you. The one thing we learned last year, LeBron James is much better at fantasy football than Jalen Rose. Not only does LeBron James have a much better NBA career than you did, he's got a much better fantasy football record than you did. For listeners and watchers that aren't up on this, Jalen's in a league with LeBron and some of LeBron's friends. You know, just people you guys have in common. And you finished behind him pretty much every year.
The year before I didn't.
Okay, 1 year you didn't.
But also, I'm going to do a lot better this year.
Good for you.
I'm planning on winning the league.
Everyone's planning on winning their league.
September 5th, 9 p.m. So don't at me. Don't call me. I'm going to be focused.
September 5th at 9 p.m.
The Kick AZZ Fantasy League.
Okay, what's that stand for?
Don't get fired.
Let's move on. One thing we do on this show.
Can I say a sleeper that has not been mentioned in 2.5 hours?
No.
Russell Wilson going off this year.
We're going to go 0 to 100 with Adam Schefter, something that we do on the show because the world is not all black and white, yes and no. We explore the gray areas with 0 to 100. Our first question for you, 0 to 100, how much did the Super Bowl ruin the Atlanta Falcons' psyche?
I think it's going to impact them this season. Ooh. And don't forget, they lose Kyle Shanahan, the offensive coordinator, to San Francisco, so they get Steve Sarkisian in as the offensive coordinator. There's no way that you go through that experience, change the offensive coordinator, and not be impacted by it. Now, they got some positive thinking people there, but it still impacts them. 60%.
The great thing for this gentleman is somebody's willing to pay him $10 million to play football this season. My 0 to 100 is, how much does Jay Cutler really want to play football this year?
Well, who want to play football this year?
Jay Cutler.
Jay Cutler. 50%. Yeah, he wants to play. The money helps change it, but the wife was behind it too. But again, he gets to sign off on it in the end. I mean, does that look like a guy who wants to play? I think 50%. 50%.
So what team is this again? Next.
Miami Dolphins.
0 to 100. How much do you think that we've actually seen the best season of Cam Newton's career already?
30%. I think with all the weapons he has around him, he can still be very effective. Now, again, it's going to be different. He's not going to be running quite as much. He's got to be smarter about the way he plays, and he knows that. But there's no reason that Cam still can't be effective with Christian McCaffrey and Curtis Samuel and Kelvin Benjamin and Greg Olsen and some of the weapons that now surround him in Carolina.
You're already in an undershirt. 0 to 100. How many caffeinated beverages will you consume during this marathon?
10%. I've had one latte from the Starbucks here in Bristol.
Oh.
It's the only one I've had so far. I had it about 6 o'clock last night.
Oh, wow.
I know I look a little bug-eyed there, but I'm just telling you. I'll have another one here before we do Mike and Mike at about 6:30. Maybe another one later today. So I guess that'd be 30 then. 30%.
Now we're gonna deviate from fantasy football for just 30 seconds. Sorry, ESPN executives. 0 to 100. How likely is it that the Michigan Wolverines make the college football playoffs?
Jalen would know better than I, but I would say 50%. It has to go. A lot of things have to go their way. A lot of seniors were lost. But Jalen and I have great faith in those men and that staff and that university to get it done. Right, Jalen? Yes. Plus, I am going to be the honorary captain for the home opener on September 9th. Once I get through with those guys, once I get through with them and fire them up for the season, they'll be ready to go to the national championship game.
Yes! After that passionate answer, I feel like the answer to this last one could be a little different. 0 to 100. How much do you need a nap right now?
0.
Nice! Nice!
0.
We train professionals.
Yes!
This is what we do.
Oh, I'm so glad that you joined us. I'm so glad that you bought in. Thank you so much for joining us on Jalen Jacoby as we finish up our leg of this marathon. No. We don't need it. Oh, you're the best. I'm so glad we got Punchy Schefter. I'm so glad we got Punchy Adam Schefter on the show. Everybody, thank you so much to our staff for staying up and everybody else. Mike and Mike are going to take the baton from us next.
You're far too kind.